So let's start on the topic today, that is ECG. And so I'll be covering these topics mainly: introduction to ECG, how to calculate the heart rate, the different waveforms of ECG, how to determine the axis in ECG, then cardiac conduction defects, that is blocks, then myocardial ischemia, and chamber enlargements, rhythm disorders, or also known as arrhythmias, ECG changes in drugs, and electrolyte abnormalities. Okay, so these will be the topics that we'll be covering in this class. So ECG, it is also known as the electrocardiograph. ECG is a record of the electrical activity of the heart. The machine which is used to record is known as the electrocardiograph, and the record is known as the electrocardiogram. So it was first recorded by Augustus Waller in 1887, but a more comprehensive work was done by Wilhelm Einthoven in 1903, and he was awarded the Nobel Prize in 1924. So it's a diagnostic tool for various heart conditions like hypertrophies, ischemia, infarction, arrhythmias, heart blocks. Okay, and ECG does not provide any information about the mechanical activity of the heart. So this is how an ECG machine looks like. You all must have seen there's a machine, and the electrodes will be connected to the chest as well as to the limbs, all four limbs, as well as the chest. So coming to the ECG leads, leads are electrodes which record the electrical potential of the heart at different sites. So there are in total 12 ECG leads. There are 3 bipolar or standard limb leads called as the lead 1, 2, 3, and there is the 3 augmented limb leads, which is also called as the unipolar leads. They are AVL, AVR, and AVF. And there are 6 chest leads, that is from V1 to V6. So in total, there are 12 ECG leads. So this is how the leads look like. These are the chest leads. And you have the other leads connected to the 4 limbs: right upper limb, left upper limb, the left lower limb, and the right lower limb. So a summary of the leads: the standard limb leads are the lead 1, 2, 3, and the augmented limb leads are known as the AVR, AVL, AVF, and precordial limb leads are V1 to V6, which is attached to the chest wall. So in total, we have 12 leads. So Einthoven's triangle, this is a concept that you should just know. Einthoven's triangle is a diagrammatic way of illustrating that the 2 arms and the left leg form the apices of the triangle surrounding the heart. So this is known as the. So here we can see the waves and limb leads. So as I told you, the standard limb leads, these are lead 1, lead 2, and lead 3. So you can see how lead 1 connects both the right upper limb and the left upper limb. The lead 2 connects the right upper limb and the left lower limb. And the lead 3 connects the left upper limb and the left lower limb. So this is the Einthoven's triangle that I was talking about, where the right upper limb, left upper limb, and the left lower limb forms this triangle, Einthoven's triangle. Coming to the standard limb leads, this is how the current goes from negative to positive. Lead 1, from right arm, the current goes to the left arm. Lead 2, right arm, from negative to positive to the left leg, which is a positive. And lead 3, left arm, negative to positive, it goes, that is the left leg. So this is how the lead 1, 2, and 3 is connected. For a better diagrammatic representation, this is the lead 1, 2, and 3. So you can see here in lead 1, from right arm, from negative to positive, the arrow goes from negative to positive. From right arm to the left arm. In lead 2, from negative to positive, it goes from the right arm to the left leg. And lead 3, It goes from the left arm to the left leg. So these are the standard limb leads. Now coming to the weights and the augmented limb leads, they are namely AVR, AVL and AVF. So it is, these leads are from the equipoint, from the intersection, midpoint it goes. AVR, which is connected to the right upper limb, AVL is connected to the left upper limb, and AVF is connected to the left lower limb. And on the ECG, these are the normal deflections that these leads show. As I told you, AVR is connected to the right arm, AVL to the left arm, and AVF is attached to the left foot. This is the augmented limb leads. They are also known as the unipolar limb leads. So electrophysiology, depolarization wave moves from the positive electrode and it gives a positive deflection. And depolarization wave, when it moves away from the positive electrode, gives a negative deflection. So this is how, when it moves towards the positive electrode, it gives a positive deflection, you can see here. And here, when it moves away from the positive and it goes towards the negative, it gives a negative deflection in the ECG. Now coming to the ECG paper, this is a long roll of paper which is composed of small squares. There are also big squares. Okay, so one square will be 1 millimeter wide and 1 millimeter high, one big square. Okay, so on the ECG paper, there are thick lines. Between the two thick lines, there will be 5 small squares. And the speed of movement of the ECG paper is 25 meters per second. This is also just for information, you can keep it in your mind. One small square in the ECG represents a potential of 0.1 millivolt and 10 small squares represent a potential of 1 millivolt. So this is the diagrammatic representation. This is a big large square that you can see on the ECG. These are the 2 dark lines. Between the 2 dark lines, you can see 5 small squares. So one big square gives a length of 5 millimeter, whereas a one small square gives a length of 1 millimeter. And with relation to time, one small square is, the time duration is 0.04 seconds. And for one big square, the time duration will be 0.2 seconds. So this you must keep in mind, because we will be calculating all the waves in the ECG with, in terms of its duration. How long is the PR interval, QT interval? So all this is in relation to, with relation to the big square. How much is one big square, small square? With relation to time, how much is one? And in terms with millimeter. Now coming to standardization. Standardization lever ECG machine that records a shift of 10 millimeter on the ECG paper. So 10 millimeter on the ECG 0.04 seconds of the cardiac cycle. One small square is now we'll go on to the waveforms in ECG. Know this depolarization is nothing but contraction. Okay, in other words, simple terms is contraction. That is a cardiac repolarization. P wave. P wave is the atrial depolarization. So P wave in the ECG, it refers to atrial contraction. Then we have the QRS complex, which is the ventricular depolarization or ventricular contraction is what QRS complex in the ECG depicts. Then we have as a T wave, that is ventricular repolarization or ventricular relaxation. So these are the main waves in the ECG that you see, P, QRS, and T. And what do they signify? P wave is the atrial contraction, QRS is the ventricular contraction. We must also know the cardiac conduction system just to go through. So we know, you all know that the SA heart originates from the, and from there you can, this is the AV bundle or the bundle of His. From there it separates bundle branch, it goes all the way down, and then it ends as Purkinje diffuses as fibers. As it goes down the intraventricular septum, it Purkinje fibers. So coming to the ECG waves, as I told you, P wave is the atrial contraction, or ATIS is the ventricular, which is the ventricular. So P wave, coming to P wave shows the right and left atrial depolarization, also called as right and left atrial contraction. This P wave is best seen in lead 2 and V1 on the ECG. It indirectly indicates the time taken by the electrical impulse to spread from the SA node to the AV node. So that's where the conduction of the heart is important, because the SA impulse generated from the SA node to AV node, whether the impulse is originating from the node or not. To know that, we phase in ECG strip, it shows the sinus rhythm. When we say the impulse is originating from the SA node. From coming next represents ventricles, or that is a contraction of the depolarization of the ventricles, at least 10 millimeters in the limb leads. The QRS complex it must be. Yeah, I mean, you're not able to hear. I mean, we should do the class for when single place quantity is possible in your life. The clarity is not there, voice is not there. So we should do the Okay, let me just, but there's no voice directly. If I try headphones, can I just give a high headphones? Will others do it? Okay. Let me see if I can connect with my hotspot instead of using the hospital internet. Please connect with my hotspot. Okay. No audible. Okay, I'll just try for one more time. Like, just let me know if again the problem of my voice breaking too much is happening. All right. So let me know in the chat box if at all my voice is not audible or if there's too much of breakage. So as I said, we were talking about QRS complex, and QRS complex, if there is a low voltage QRS complex, it will be less than 10 millimeter height in the precordial leads, that's the chest leads, and 5 millimeter in the limb leads. Okay, so where all do you get low voltage QRS complex is in hypothyroidism, pericardial effusion, and a thick chest wall. This is an ECG of the low voltage QRS patient. So here you can see the QRS complex. It is so low, so small the QRS complex is. So the limb leads are 1, 2, 3, AVR, AVL, AVF. So it's less than 5 millimeter in the limb leads, and the precordial leads, it is less than 10 millimeter. So that is the criteria to say patient is having a low voltage QRS. Just by one look in the ECG, you can say patient is having a low QRS complex ECG. Okay. Then coming the other abnormality of QRS complex is where you get a high voltage QRS complex. So those are mainly in ventricular hypertrophies. So maximum voltage of QRS complex may be 35 millimeter. So you get such high, you can see in this ECG, the QRS complexes are so deep. So this is a very high voltage QRS complex. So this is mainly you get in ventricular hypertrophies. This is a left ventricular hypertrophy ECG. So you can find these changes in the ECG. Coming to T wave represents the repolarization or relaxation of the ventricles. So T wave, the ventricles come into complete relaxation. Abnormalities of T waves is hyperkalemia, where you get tall T waves, and you can see T wave inversion sometimes in ECGs. That is also suggestive of myocardial ischemia. Now coming to how to calculate the heart rate on the ECG. What you do is you count the number of big boxes between two successive QRS complexes and divide 300 by this. Okay, so or you can count the number of small boxes between the two R waves. R wave is the positive deflection that goes up, P, Q, R wave. R wave is the deflection that goes up. So between two R waves, two cycles, you can count the number of big boxes or small boxes. So if you're counting the big boxes, it will be 300 by 4 will be the formula. And if you're counting the small boxes, it will be 1500 by the number of small boxes between the RR interval. That will give you the heart rate. This is how a normal ECG looks. So lead 1 is cut out. So lead 1, lead 2, lead 3. Then we have the AVR, AVL, AVF, V1, and these are the chest leads V1, V2, V3, V4, V5, and V6. So the 12 ECG leads. So this is how a normal ECG looks like. Coming to QT interval, this is measured from the beginning of QRS complex to the end of T wave. Q, the beginning of QRS complex to the end of T wave. So normal QT interval is below 0.4 to 0.44 seconds. It's measured in the mid precordial leads, and the total duration of the electrical systole is represented by QT interval. So abnormalities in the QT interval, you can see prolonged QT interval in hypocalcemia and a shortened QT interval in hypercalcemia. So now coming to the PR interval. PR interval, this is from the beginning of P wave to the starting of QRS complex. Okay. So its normal duration is from 0.12 to 0.2 seconds. In other words, 3 to 5 small squares. It represents the time taken by the electrical impulse to spread from the SA node to the ventricles. So PR interval is very important in terms to blocks in the heart. So the normal duration is of PR, beginning of P wave to the starting of QRS is 3 to 5 small squares. So in this ECG, we can see P wave followed by the Q wave, and then we have the upward positive deflection, that is the R wave. Then we have a negative deflection, that is the S wave. And then, so PQRS complex, and then finally the T wave. This shows the ventricular relaxation. So PR interval, when we said it is from the SA node to the AV node for the impulse to pass through, that is the P wave. All right. And then we have is the PR interval, as I told, PR interval from the beginning of P wave to the beginning of QRS complex. Then we have is the ST segment, which is important in relation to myocardial infarction and ischemias. And the QRS complex, we must see whether it's normal, abnormal, and QT interval. Beginning of Q wave to the end of T wave. So prolonged PR interval. Prolonged PR interval shows a delayed conduction from the SA node to the AV node. So you get it in conditions like first degree heart block, second degree heart block, Mobitz type 1, digitalis therapy, and hyperkalemia. Again, this is the picture of the cardiac cycle once again from the SA node to AV node, bundle of His, right and left bundle branches, and then the Purkinje fibers. So first degree AV block. So coming to the first abnormality now in terms of conduction, the first degree AV block. In first degree AV block, there will be a delay in the conduction of impulse from atria to ventricle through the AV node. So a prolonged PR interval is more than 0.20 seconds. So 0.20 seconds is one big box, right? So, so you get a prolonged PR interval in first degree AV block. So we have the P wave here, and then there is a prolongation. Then comes the QR. So the PR interval is prolonged here. It's more than one box, one big box, more than 0.20 seconds. So we can see there is a delay in the PR interval is prolonged here. So we can say there is a first degree AV block here in this ECG. So again, causes are drugs like beta blockers, digitalis, acute rheumatic fever, myocardial infarction, acute infection. All these conditions you can get a first degree AV block. Coming to second degree AV block, that is Mobitz type 1 block. There is a gradual prolongation of the PR interval. So it starts off here, you can see the PR interval, again further prolongation of PR interval, then again further prolongation of the PR interval, and then there is a skipped beat. Okay, so this gradual prolongation of PR interval in successive beats till the P wave is completely blocked and a dropped beat occurs. This is known as the Wenckebach's phenomenon. There's a dropped beat here. So P wave is not followed by a QRS complex. So this is known as Mobitz type 1 AV block. Again, causes are drugs like beta blockers, digitalis, verapamil, rheumatic carditis, acute myocardial infarction. Coming to second degree AV block, that is the type 2, Mobitz type 2. There are two types in type 2 AV block. PR interval and PP interval here is constant. There is no PR prolongation. PR interval prolongation is not there in Mobitz type 2 block. There are intermittent drops of beats. So there you can see here in this ECG, there is no PR prolongation here. PR interval is constant, but there is intermittent drops of beats are there. So again, causes us acute MI, you can get this finding. Coming to the last AV block, that is the third degree or complete heart block. Here the atrial impulse is not conducted to the ventricles. Okay, so ventricles is excited by a lower junctional or ventricular rhythm. You can see in complete heart block or third degree AV block, there will be bradycardia, heart rate of less than 50 per minute. PP interval remains constant. There will be a wide QRS complex, complete AV dissociation. QRS is not preceded by a P wave. Atria and ventricle contract independent of each other. So there's no relation, they contract independent of each other. You can find a P wave, you can find wide QRS complexes here. So there is wide QRS complex, there is sinus bradycardia, you can see severe bradycardia. The heart rate will definitely, if you calculate the heart rate, will be less than 50 per minute. And atria and ventricles, they contract independent of each other, P wave and QRS complexes. Causes is acute MI, digitalis toxicity, and congenital AV block. This is an ECG of a complete heart block. It's not very clear, but you can see P wave. Then there is a QRS complex here. So atrial contraction, there's a ventricle contraction. They are all independent of each other. And there is severe bradycardia also. Coming to right bundle branch block. So in bundle branch blocks, right and left, and from the AV bundle, it goes down to the right and left bundle branch blocks. So if there is a bundle branch block, usually there is the RSR dash pattern. So you must know this. So it is also known as the M pattern. So in right bundle branch block, you can see RSR dash pattern in lead V1. V1, V2 mainly shows the right ventricular activity, V5, V6 will show the left ventricular activity. So in the right bundle branch block, you must see the V1, V2 and RSR dash pattern, that is the M pattern. The QRS duration of less than 0.12 seconds or less than 3 millimeter or 3 small boxes is called as incomplete RBBB, or more than 0.12 seconds or more than 3 millimeter or more than 3 small boxes will be known as a complete right bundle branch block. Along with it, there will be deep and wide S waves in lead 1, AVL, V5 and V6. So towards the left ventricle, that is V5, V6, you will get a W pattern. W pattern is nothing but deep and wide S waves. Along with it, you can find changes of ST depression and T wave inversions in the right ventricular lead, that is V1 and V2 precordial leads. This is the RSR dash pattern. So as you all know, R is a positive deflection, and then we have is a S wave, that is a negative deflection, and then again a R dash. Again there is an R wave, that is known as the R dash. So you get in bundle branch blocks these M patterns. M pattern you get it in right bundle branch block in V1, and you get a W pattern, that is a deep S wave, and a broad wave, that is known as a W pattern in the left ventricular leads, that is V5, V6. So this is a right bundle branch block ECG. You can see in V2 and V3 the M pattern, RSR dash pattern. So this is a right bundle branch block. So causes is a normal variant, pulmonary embolism, ischemic heart disease, and all causes of right ventricular hypertrophy, like your COPD, right heart failure. Okay. Then coming to left bundle branch block. So here there will be wide and notched R waves. That is again the M pattern, RSR dash pattern. You can get it in lead 1, AVL, V5 and V6. They are the left ventricle. They depict the left ventricle, V5 and V6. The QRS duration will be more than 0.12 seconds or 3 millimeter. That is 3 small squares. And along with that, you can find ST depression and T wave inversion in left ventricular leads, that is V5 and V6. Causes are again ischemic heart disease, hypertension, hypertensive heart disease, cardiomyopathy. So this is an ECG of the left bundle branch block. Here you can see the M pattern, RSR dash pattern in the left ventricular leads are V5 and V6. So you can see the M pattern in V5 and V6. And we can find the W pattern in the V1, V2, that is deep and broad S waves. Now coming to determining the axis in the ECG. So cardiac axis, it is the flow of current from one point to another. It is represented by an arrow. This is called as the vector. The direction of flow of current, that is the arrow point, is always towards the positive deflection. So mainly cardiac axis, you have to see the mean QRS axis. So normal cardiac axis is, the range is from 0 to 90 degrees. Beyond this limit, it is said to be deviated. So you can, this is just a picture This is the Einthoven's triangle where the limb leads are placed. This is how in the frontal plane you have the lead 1, and then you have the augmented limb leads AVR, AVL, AVF. You can see the direction of the flow of current towards the positive. So this is the axis. So this 0 to 90 is the normal axis of the heart. I will show you more diagrammatic presentations so it's more clear to you. Again, this is the Einthoven's triangle. The light blue colored part is the normal axis of the heart. Minus 30 or 0 degrees to 90 degrees is the normal axis of the heart. So the normal QRS axis is defined as ranging from minus 30 to plus 90. Minus 30 to minus 90 is referred to as the left axis deviation, and plus 90 to 180 is referred to as the right axis deviation. So again, this much minus 30 to plus 90 is the normal axis. Minus 30 to minus 90 is the left axis, and plus 90 to 180 is the right axis deviation. Beyond this is indeterminate axis. So this is how the heart is located, and this is how it's towards the left. So here, this is the normal axis of the heart in placement to our body. So 0 to 90 or minus 30 to 90 is the normal axis. So beyond minus 30 to minus 90 goes as to left axis deviation. And this is all with relation to mean QRS axis in the ECG. Here you can see left axis deviation 1 and AVF. These QRS will be facing opposite each other, away from each other. 1 and AVF leads you must see in the ECG to determine the axis. This is an easy method. You have to see, look at the 1 and AVF in the ECG leads. Normal axis, 1 and AVF, lead 1 and AVF, you must look. If it is positive deflection, both are positive deflection, it is a normal axis. Again, right axis deviation, lead 1 will be a negative deflection and AVF will be a positive deflection. Other words, we say it's towards each other or kissing each other, we say. So that is a right axis deviation. Away is left axis deviation, and this is extreme left axis deviation. I mean, right axis deviation. Axis deviation, so right axis deviation, there will be an increased, it depicts that's an increased activity in the right ventricle. Like there is right ventricular hypertrophy or right bundle branch block, COPD, pulmonary emboli. If there's a left axis deviation, there is increased activity in the happening in the left ventricle. Like there could be a left bundle branch block, a left ventricular hypertrophy seen in hypertension, or left anterior hemiblock. So this is a ECG showing the right axis deviation. So here you must always, for looking at the axis, must look at lead 1 and AVF. So here it is negative deflection QRS, and this is the positive deflection. Almost like I said, the mnemonic is kissing each other. So 1 and AVF towards each other is right axis deviation. Left axis deviation will be lead 1 and AVF. If you look, it is away from each other. So that is suggestive of left axis deviation in the ECG. Coming to ST segment, this segment is measured from the end of the QRS deflection and up to the beginning of the P wave, of the T wave, ST segment. Okay, so it represents the isoelectric period when ventricles are in between repolarization and depolarization, between the contraction as well as the relaxation of the ventricles. ST, T wave is complete relaxation and QRS is contraction of the ventricles. So it is the isoelectric period when the ventricles are in between the contraction and relaxation. So its duration is 0.08 seconds. That is 2 small squares. ST segment elevation is seen in recent myocardial infarction or hyperkalemia, and ST depression. These are the two things you must look for in terms to ST segment. And ST depression is seen in myocardial ischemia, digitalis therapy, hypokalemia. So just to show you, this is the downsloping of the ST segment. This is the upsloping of the ST segment, and this is the horizontal ST segment. There's another one thing you need to know about J point. What is J point? J point represents the point at which QRS complex ends and at which the ST segment begins. So it's the exact point at which all parts of ventricles are depolarized or contraction. So that is the time when all parts of ventricle contraction happens. Okay. So this is the J point at the end of QRS and the beginning of ST elevation, ST segment. This is the J point. So now coming to this term called as myocardial ischemia. So what are the ischemic changes on an ECG? And what is subendocardial infarction? The changes that you see on ECG is ST depressions and T wave inversions. So these all are ischemic changes. If there are T wave inversions, ST depressions on the ECG, they are all suggestive of some ischemic activity happening in the heart. Horizontal or downward sloping towards the end of the ST segment at its junction with the T wave. J point depression is of 1 millimeter. So this is how a normal PQRST or ST segment looks. And here you can see the ST depression. Okay. These are all suggestive of ischemic changes, T wave inversions and ST depressions. Just to show you about the ST changes, you can see here there are in the right ventricle. Hello, sir. No, sir, I'm taking class, sir. Okay. So here you can see is T wave inversions in V2 and V3. And then there are ST elevations from V4 to V6. Okay, and also you can see gross T wave inversions in V2, V3, V4, V5, and V6. Again, this is a ECG showing the ST depression. This is just to show how an ST depression looks on the ECG. So you can see the QRS, and then there is a ST depression here. This is the PQRS ST depression here. All right, so this is to show you the gross ST depression in this ECG. Now coming to myocardial infarction. So in myocardial infarction, to say the patient is having an MI, ongoing active MI, there will be pathological Q waves can be there. There can be ST segment elevation. There can be T wave inversions. So this ECG is showing the ST elevation. You can see in V2, V4, V3, V5, VC. All these are ST elevations. So this is known as the tombstone appearance of the ECG of the ST segment. So to call it a pathological Q wave, the Q wave must be of more than 2 millimeter depth, or it should be of a duration of more than 0.04 seconds. That is also just more than 1 millimeter square, small square, or Q wave of more than 25% of the following R wave height. So call it a pathological Q wave. The depth must be more than 25% of the following R wave height. All these are suggestive of pathological Q waves. You can see the Q waves in this ECG. Lead 2 is showing this deep Q wave. Here lead 3 also is showing a Q wave. AVF is also showing a Q wave. So this is actually the inferior wall of the heart suggests of 2, 3 AVF. Lead suggests of inferior wall of the heart. So you can see this just to show you the Q waves. This is ECG. You can see some T wave inversions also, ischemic changes happening, ischemia happening. These all are pathological Q waves. Okay, the inferior wall of the heart suggestive of some ongoing ischemia, infarction. So earliest abnormality will be usually an ST elevation. So, and within hours to days, Q waves appear. In the later stage, T wave becomes symmetrically inverted. Presence of only Q waves in the ECG suggests of an old MI only, if only Q waves are there. So after MI, the earliest abnormality you see is an ST elevation happening in an ongoing myocardial infarction. Within hours to days, it changes to Q wave appears. A later stage, T wave becomes inverted. Just to tell you about the anatomical groups, V1, V2, V3, V4, they are all anteroseptal leads. Okay. This is the anteroseptal leads are from V1 to V4. Then you have the lateral wall MI or lateral leads are high lateral is 1 AVL, V5 and V6. They are the lateral wall. Suggestive of any ST changes in these leads in the ECG suggestive of a lateral wall MI. And 2-3 EVF depicts the inferior wall of the heart. 2-3 AVF. So coming to this ECG, it is to show you the, you can see the T wave inversions in the anteroseptal leads. That is V2, there is T wave inversion, V3, there's T wave inversion, V4, there's T wave inversion, V5, V6, all there are ischemic changes happening in the precordial leads. That is the anteroseptal lateral walls, all there are ischemic changes going on. Then coming to inferior wall MI. Inferior wall MI, there is changes in the lead 2-3 AVF like I told, and there are reciprocal changes in the anterior leads. Reciprocal changes are mainly, you can see changes like ST depressions in the anterior leads. If there are ST elevation in lead 2-3 going on, there will be reciprocal changes like ST depression, T wave inversions and all you can see in the reciprocal changes in the anterior leads. So here we can see, just to show you the ST elevation, you can see there is ST elevation in lead 2, there is ST elevation in lead 3, then in AVF, that means the inferior wall MI is going on, and you can see some reciprocal changes here. In AVL, there is some ST depression. In the V1, V2, you can see some ST depressions, T wave inversions. These are the reciprocal changes. This is another ECG, again showing this is also an ST elevation, lead 2, 3 AVF, there is ST elevation. There is again reciprocal changes like ST depression, AVL, and in the lateral leads, V4, V5, V6, you can see. So again, just to show you the ST elevation, all these are, so you should never miss out a ST elevation on an ECG. Always look at the ST segment carefully. Anterior wall infarction, anteroseptal MI is leads from V1 to V4. Anterolateral is from 1 AVL, V5 and V6. And there will be reciprocal changes in the inferior leads. If it's anterolateral, inferior leads. If it's inferior wall MI, then the anterolateral leads, there will be reciprocal changes. Again, to show you the tombstone appearance, you can see this is a anterolateral MI, anteroseptal almost anterior and the left lateral wall of the heart, there is an MI, active MI going on. V1, V2, V3, you can see the tombstone appearance of the ST elevation. V4, there is ST elevation. V5 also can see the gross ST elevation changes. Here again, you can see ST elevation V2, V3, V4, all right, and T wave inversions you can see in the reciprocal changes in the inferior leads. Lead 3, AVF, you can see some ST depression and T wave inversions. And the next topic we're going to talk about is chamber enlargements. So to talk about left atrial enlargement, it is also known as the P mitral. So left atrial enlargement, there you can see broad and notched P waves, and particularly P waves are so lead to, you can see this notched P waves, and it is broad. The duration should be more than 2.5 millimeter or more than 2.5 squares in width. All right. So you can see P wave inversion also in a negative component in V1, but mainly this is the broad P waves in lead 2. Okay, more than 2.5 millimeter. Now to say there is right atrial enlargement, this is known as the P pulmonale. So here in P pulmonale, instead of in P mitral, it was the width, but here the P waves will be tall and peaked P waves. And this is best seen in lead 2 again, P waves. So you can see here the tall and peaked P waves, the length will be more than 2.5 millimeter. And you can get this in conditions of COPD, pulmonary stenosis, all right heart condition, and tricuspid valve disease. Okay. So tall P waves is P pulmonale, right atrial enlargement. Now coming to left ventricular hypertrophy. So if it's left ventricular hypertrophy, there are many criterias for LVH. You can choose any one criteria, whatever is comfortable for you, and calculate the LVH. So one criteria is R wave in lead 5 or V6 being more than 25 millimeter. Or you can calculate the S wave. S wave is the negative deflection. S wave in V1, and then add that with the R wave, the positive deflection QRS, R wave in V5 or V6. If you add both, then you get it to be more than 35 millimeter. So that is almost like 7 squares, no, 7 large squares. It will be suggestive of left ventricular hypertrophy. So there'll be, again, this is another ECG of left ventricular hypertrophy, where when we were discussing about QRS complexes, we saw that there were deep increased QRS voltage. In hypertrophies, we get it. This is in left ventricular hypertrophy. Along with that, mainly it's you have to calculate the QRS voltage according to the criteria that I mentioned. Along with that, you can find ST depression, T wave inversion changes, left axis deviations, left atrial enlargements. You can get along with this left ventricular hypertrophy. Causes of LVH or left ventricular hypertrophy is hypertension, aortic stenosis, mitral regurgitation, coarctation of aorta. Now coming to the last chamber enlargement, that is right ventricular hypertrophy. So again, the criteria you can choose is dominant R wave in V1. This is V1 and you have a R wave, that's the upward deflection. It is more than 7 millimeters. That is almost almost 2.5 squares, you can say. It's suggestive of right ventricular hypertrophy. In a normal ECG, if you look at V1, it is always a negative deflection. So this is suggestive of right ventricular hypertrophy. Along with that, you can find right axis deviation. There can be ST segment depression and T wave inversions in right ventricular leads. These are the right ventricular leads, V1, V2. So you can see ST depression, T wave inversions here. right axis deviation. We can see the lead 1 and AVF towards each other. So all this you can get along with right ventricular hypertrophy, but mainly you must calculate the QRS complex. Dominant R wave in V1 of more than 7 millimeter. Cause of RVH is all cause of pulmonary hypertension, pulmonary stenosis. Now coming to the next aspect, that is rhythm. So rhythm of the heart is checked by the intervals between the two R waves or two S waves. So if the number of small or large squares are equal between the two R waves or S waves, the rhythm is said to be normal. If not, if the rhythm between the two QRS complexes, it is not regular, then the rhythm is said to be irregular, and irregular rhythm is called as arrhythmias. So classification of arrhythmias, like I told you, first the conduction begins from the SA node, pacemaker of the heart. So in arrhythmias, it can start from the SA node. It can be arrhythmias be of atrial origin. It can arise from in and around the AV junction. It can originate from the ventricle 7. So recognition of morphology and rate of P waves, then QRS complex, whether wide or narrow. So you must see the recognition and morphology and rate of P waves, QRS complex, whether it is more or less than 0.12 seconds. The relationship between P waves and the QRS complexes also you must see in arrhythmias. How does the P wave look? QRS, whether it's wide or narrow. For that, it should be whether it is more than 0.212 seconds. So it will be more than 3 boxes, more or less than 3 small boxes, the QRS complex. And the relationship between the P and the QRS complexes. So a normal sinus rhythm is when between the RR, this is the RR. Between these RR, it should be of equal interval. Between the RR wave, RR interval, it should be of equal distance. You must always look at the P wave morphology, relation of P and the QRS. The RR interval must be equal. And the QRS, whether it's broad or wide, or more or less than 0.12 milliseconds. So arrhythmias in relation to SA node. There's a sinus arrhythmia. In here, this is a sinus rhythm, but the RR interval varies with respiration. This is a normal aspect only, but varies with the respiration. Heart rate increases during inspiration and decreases during expiration. This is a ECG of a sinus arrhythmia. You can see that here the PQRS complexes are really close to each other, and then there is a bit of normally spaced. Then on inspiration again it comes so close to each other, and during expiration it kind of widens, but it's actually it's in relation to respiration. There is sinus arrhythmia. This is a ECG of sinus tachycardia. Here if you look at closely, you can see the P waves. Then you have a QRS. This is again low voltage QRS complex. So P, you can see a QRS, and then a T, and then immediately again a P. So it's like you can see the P waves. Again, look always for P waves in lead V1 and lead 2. You can see the P waves here, followed by QRS, and then T. Again, you can see, but you can make out the P waves. P waves are seen. The sinus tachycardia. You can calculate the heart rate between the two RR, small squares or large squares. Then you have sinus bradycardia. This is ECG of sinus bradycardia. So you can see here the P waves, then you have the QRS complex, and then you have a T. So if you calculate the heart rate, definitely it will be less than 50. So this is the ECG of sinus bradycardia. To say it is in sinus rhythm, you must see the P waves. The impulse is originating from the SA node. Now coming to paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia. This is also known as PSVT. So it occurs due to the atrial rapid ectopic activity. The rate here is between 160 to 220 per minute, and there are regular QRS complexes here. Normal ST and T wave changes also. The preceding the QRS complex, there will be a preceding P dash wave, but the P dash wave may not be made out as it is hidden in the QRS T complex. So here in this ECG, you may not be able to make out a P wave here. P wave is all, the P dash wave is all merged in the QRS complex. So here, this is, here QRS complex is perfect, STT is also perfect. You can see tachycardia here, but no P waves. So this is an ECG suggestive of paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia. So causes for PSVT is rheumatic heart disease, ischemic heart disease, mitral valve prolapse, and thyrotoxicosis. Coming to the next arrhythmia, that is atrial fibrillation. Atrial fibrillation occurs due to completely disorganized disorganized atrial depolarization without effective contraction. So P waves are replaced by small irregular or coarse undulations called as a fibrillatory or F waves because the whole atria is not contracting. Ventricular response is irregular. So atrial fibrillation occurs due to the completely disorganized atrial contraction without effective contraction. Depolarization without effective contraction. So here you get irregular rhythm. There is varying RR interval. There's a normal QRST complex. The atrial rate is around 300 to 600 per minute with ventricular rate of 100 to 160 per minute. Atrial rate, you can see from the RR interval, you can calculate the ventricular rate, and atrial rate from the PP interval. So no definite P wave is preceding the QRS and is replaced by fibrillatory F waves with undulating baseline. So here you can see the atrial fibrillation ECG. So here you can see the P waves, but QRS complexes. You can see some fibrillatory F waves here. So the RR interval is very irregular here. All right, after a P, again a P is repeating. So this is a ECG of varying RR interval, ECG of atrial fibrillation. Causes of atrial fibrillation is thyrotoxicosis, hypertension, rheumatic heart disease, ischemic heart disease, and a lone atrial fibrillation. Coming to atrial flutter indicates organic heart disease. Re-entry mechanism and atrial ectopic activity are responsible mechanisms. Due to rapid atrial activity, there will be a block in AV conduction in the ratio of 2:1 or 4:1. So during atrial flutter, the AV node is not able to transmit all the impulses to the ventricles. So ventricular rate is 1/3 or 1/4 of the atrial rate. So you can see this atrial flutter in coronary artery disease, mitral valve disease, cor pulmonale, cardiomyopathy. ECG pattern in atrial flutter is there is rapid atrial rate from 250 to 350 per minute, normal QRST with regular ventricular rhythm. Flutter F waves are replacing the P waves with a sawtooth-like appearance. So the characteristic of atrial flutter is its sawtooth appearance. The P waves are replaced by the F waves, which is the flutter waves. So here you can see tachycardia and can see a 2:1 conduction, 2 P waves and then a QRS, 2 P waves, then a QRS. So it gives the P waves or the F waves are giving a sawtooth kind of an appearance. This ECG and at one look gives a sawtooth kind of an appearance. So there is a regular ventricular rhythm here. RR interval is normal. RR interval depicts the ventricular rhythm. PP interval depicts the atrial rhythm. So the PP interval is disturbed here, the atrial flutter. Now, next coming to ventricular arrhythmias. Ventricular extrasystoles or ventricular premature contractions it is called. So the causes are physiological or fatigue or emotional stress. Then organic causes is ischemic heart disease, myocardial infarction, rheumatic heart disease, hypertensive heart disease, hypoxia. Okay, so you can see VPCs or ventricular premature contractions in these conditions. So in VPCs, the P wave is absent and the QRS is wide and bizarre. It is also depicted as the sore thumb appearance, the ventricular premature contractions. So you can see before the ventricular premature contraction, there is no P wave. Here PQRST, PQRST. Here, this is the PQRST. This is a T wave. So there is no P wave is not there before the VPC, before the ventricular premature contraction. Here also you can see PQRST and then there's a QRS complex. There's no preceding P wave. You can see also that there is associated ST depressions and there is a T wave that is opposite to the QRS direction, QRS complex. Next, coming to ventricular tachycardia, when at least 3 consecutive ventricular premature contractions occur in rapid succession, more than 0.12 seconds, rate of more than 100 per minute, ST and T changes, that is direction of T wave is opposite to the QRS, rhythm is called ventricular tachycardia. Bizarre or abnormal QRS complex is because the impulse is arising from one of the ventricles. From one of the ventricles is conducted not through the normal His-Purkinje system but through the ventricular muscle. So you get bizarre or abnormal QRS complexes in ventricular tachycardia. There will be tachycardia rate will be more than 100. There can be ST T wave changes in rapid succession of more than 0.3 small boxes. This is the wide QRS complexes. You can see the bizarre and abnormal wide QRS complexes. So this is an ECG depicting the ventricular tachycardia. Sustained ventricular tachycardia is ventricular tachycardia lasting for more than 30 seconds. And causes of sustained ventricular tachycardia is myocardial infarction, cardiomyopathy, and the sustained ventricular tachycardia can terminate into ventricular flutter and ventricular fibrillation. Coming to ventricular fibrillation, it is a rapid, irregular, and ineffective contractions of small segments of the ventricles. It is termed as ventricular fibrillation. Peripheral pulse is absent as cardiac output is 0 and is usually a terminal event unless reverted. This is how a ventricular fibrillation ECG looks like. Ventricular fibrillation is an irregular and chaotic ventricular rhythm. QRST morphology cannot be made out. There is no definitive wave pattern. Causes is acute myocardial infarction, digoxin toxicity, hyperkalemia. Now coming to the last topic, that is ECG changes in drugs and electrolyte abnormalities. In hyperkalemia, that is potassium levels are very high in the blood. There you get tall and peaked tented T waves, okay, in the mid precordial leads, that is in V2 to V5. So if you're suspecting high potassium levels, so you can do an ECGs, you can look for tall and peaked tented T waves in the precordial leads. This is an ECG of the tall and tented T waves you can see in these precordial leads. You can see the tall T waves here. Tall and tented T waves. Okay, so this is a ECG finding of hyperkalemia. Coming to hypokalemia, that is less than normal of the potassium value in the blood, you can see prominent U waves. Okay, so U waves happen after the T wave. Okay, so here you have the P wave, QRS complex, There is a T wave followed by a U wave. There are T wave inversions and ST depression here, and then there is a U wave. So you can see there is a P, this is QRS, T wave inversion, and then one wave again coming up, that is the U wave. So U wave you can see in which electrolyte abnormality? Hypokalemia, along with ST depression and T wave changes. Next, in hypercalcemia, high calcium values in the blood, there will be shortening of the QT interval. So importance of QT interval in ECG is in hypercalcemia. Here you can see the QRS complex and then you can see the T wave. So this is the shortening of QT interval, QRS and T. So QT interval is extremely shortened in hypercalcemia. It's an ECG of short QT interval. Now hypocalcemia, there is prolonged QT interval. So hypocalcemia, lower level of calcium than normal. If you do an ECG, look for the QT interval and you can see a prolonged the QRS and then T. You can see a prolongation of the QT interval. QRS and then T, you can see prolongation of the QT interval. Coming to drugs, effect of digitalis. Patients who are taking digoxin, you can find there is ST depression with a T wave inversion causing a reversed tick mark in leads with prominent R waves. So this is the reverse tick mark sign, ST depression with T wave inversion. There's an ST depression with a T wave inversion. This is depicting of reverse tick mark sign with prominent R waves. R wave is the upward deflection. So there's prominent R waves with a reverse tick mark sign in patients taking digoxin. Now, if there is digoxin toxicity, if it's suspected, it can cause any type of arrhythmias. Okay, there can be sinus bradycardia, there can be sinoatrial blocks, there can be paroxysmal atrial tachycardia, ventricular ectopics. We discussed about ventricular premature complexes, there can be ventricular bigeminy, first degree heart blocks, and first degree AV block. So all this kind of arrhythmias are common with digitalis. Patients who are taking digoxin and there is a toxicity, digoxin toxicity, all these arrhythmias can be there. Now, when you're reporting an ECG, you must always, before when reporting an ECG, you must look at the heart rate, calculate the heart rate from the ECG. Formulas have been told. What is the rhythm, whether it is in sinus rhythm, whether P waves are there or not, whether the impulse is originating from the SA node or not, what is the axis of the ECG. So what is the wave morphology, the PQRST, the P wave, how is the P wave morphology, how is the QRS complex in each of the leads, how is the PR interval, is important with relation to AV blocks. SA to AV node conduction is depicted by the PR interval. How is the ST segment, that is important with terms of ischemia, myocardial ischemia and infarction. How is the T wave? T wave depicts the ventricular relaxation and abnormalities in T wave in which all conditions. Then QT interval with relation to calcium, hypocalcemia, hypercalcemia. T wave also is important in terms of hyperkalemia, hypokalemia. How is the QT interval? So all this before, when you're reporting an ECG, before you must look into these wave morphologies, axis, rhythm, and heart rate. So at least this much must be known. That's the end of the presentation, ECG presentation. Thank you. Any questions? So there has been a V2 lead of hypercalcemia. So see, mainly QT interval, definitely we look into the precordial leads only to read the QT interval. To read the QT interval, we look from V2 to V6 only, precordial leads only to check the QT interval. So in comparison to a normal ECG, when you see, you can definitely see this is the P wave, this is the QRS complex, the R wave upward deflection, the S wave coming down, and then the ST. So the beginning from the this Q to T, there is a shortening of this interval, beginning of P wave to end of T wave. So this QT interval is shortened. So mainly it is just to show the QT interval. This ECG has been shown just to show you the QT interval shortening. Okay, thank you.